and an element of adventure. But don't put it off into the future. Bring it into play right here and right now, because right here and right now is where you are deluded. And it's not because you're in an environment of delusion. You're not in an environment of illusions. You're in the middle of the kingdom of heaven. If this isn't true, then we might as well stop reading the course. You might as well stop studying it. You might as well stop considering what it's saying. It's not just a bunch of nice ideas to store away in your memory, to draw upon to comfort you while you suffer through things that are not even real. So, what am I saying? I'm saying be more proactive in terms of your healing. Be more proactive in terms of having very low tolerance for the imposition of suffering. And understand that the abolishment of suffering is going to happen right where you are, right now. And it will happen whether you're totally awake or not. It will happen whether you're deserving or not. So, cast your vote. Put your weight on the side that you want freedom, instead of putting your full weight, casting your vote on the side of suffering and what can you expect? We're in the human condition. It's like saying, well, of course I'm insane. I'm in an insane asylum. If they just let me out of here, everybody would see I was fine. In the insane asylum is where the one who is insane will get well. In the human condition, at whatever level of development you are, you will begin to have the evidences of waking up as you choose for clarity. And what happens? What happens in the middle of your inevitable suffering? You have a healing, a clarification, a transformation. Maybe it's not earth-shaking, maybe it isn't universally impactful. But each time you have the experience of banging your head and not hurting, every time the sensation of a cold coming on occurs and you say, I don't buy it, I object, and it goes away, you're demonstrating the fact that you will wake up right where you are, and each of those events will weaken tremendously the hold that the status quo has on you, that the language of suffering has on you. So instead of saying, don't be surprised if you get a headache when you bump your head against a wall, start saying, don't be surprised if you don't suffer at all when you bump your head against a wall. There's quite a difference there. One is an open door to expansion into total freedom. It undoes the status quo. So, don't be lazy and sloppy. Start taking hold of your birthright. Let's go to the book. The Journey Back. For those of you who are in the first or second editions, just be patient. There's some text here that you do not have. You are hampered in your progress by your demands to know what you do not know. And I'm going to add, because it was implicit in what I was saying, you are hampered in your progress by your demands to know what you do not know before you will continue to move forward. I was addressing this to Helen and Bill. It's true for everyone else as well. You are always hampered in your progress by your demands to know what you do not know before you will proceed forward. This is actually a way of holding on to deprivation. You cannot reasonably object to following instructions in a course for knowing on the grounds that you do not know. The need for the course is implicit in your objection. Now here's the correction. Knowledge is not the motivation for learning this course. Peace is. As the prerequisite for knowledge, peace must be learned. This is only because those who are in conflict are not peaceful, and peace is the condition of knowledge, because it is the condition of the kingdom. It's a very simple thing. You cannot know the truth if you are not in your peace. If you want to know the truth, you must choose for your peace first and get into it. Truth is a singularity, and it cannot be perceived through the lens of conflict. Continuing, knowledge, or what I have referred to as knowing with a capital K, will be restored when you meet its conditions. This is not a bargain made by God, who makes no bargains. It is merely the result of your misuse of His laws on behalf of a will that is not His. When you say, my will be done, my definitions be done, my word be done, what you're doing is playing at having a will, playing at being an independent willer of things. The only thing is that that independent state, that so-called independent state, is something you have imagined. It isn't a state that can exist, because you can't be separated from your source and its will, which is your true will. And so you are inevitably in a state of conflict when you are being willful. Knowledge is His will, God's will. If you are opposing His will, how can you have knowledge? Any of you who has been in a state of worry and fear and conflict, who has chosen to set it aside temporarily in order to meditate and become still, has found that in the stillness, clarity comes. Knowing what is appropriate comes. Knowing what is true comes. And in knowing what is true, you know what you don't need to be concerned about. You know what is illusory and is therefore not worthy of your attention, and you set it aside. And you realize that the very state of conflict that you were in was a result of being out of your peace in the first place. Continuing, I have told you what knowledge offers you, but it is clear that you do not regard this as wholly desirable. If you did, you would hardly be willing to throw it away so readily when the ego asks for your allegiance. Well, part of the problem is that the ego asks for your allegiance in the language of suffering, a language you're well familiar with. And out of habit, you tend to join with it, because the language of healing is not as firmly established in you, and you have not arrived at enough clarity about it to give your allegiance to it, no matter what is said to you in the old language. Continuing, the distraction of the ego seems to interfere with your learning, but the ego has no power to distract you unless you give it the power. I said earlier that beliefs come to you for life and you give them all the life they have. Well, likewise, the ego comes to you for life and you give it all the life it has. The journey back is where you step back from giving it life to recognizing that you're the power. You are that which is valid, which the ego must borrow from in order to appear to have life. And you do not choose to energize it any further and confuse the whole situation. That's the journey back. Continuing, the ego's voice is a hallucination. You cannot expect it to say, I am not real. Hallucinations are inaccurate perceptions of reality. See, the world and universe, and whatever you mean by those words, are an inaccurate description of the kingdom of heaven. And what you're describing, you're creating for yourself, and so you're having an hallucination about what? About reality, about the kingdom of heaven. Hallucinations are inaccurate perceptions of reality. Yet you are not asked to dispel them alone. You are merely asked to evaluate them in terms of their results to you. Well, that's what we've been talking about. You hit your head against a wall and you have a headache. Not too pleasing results, I would say. I feel a cold coming on, and it comes on. Not too pleasing results, I would say. You've got to weigh the results. On the other hand, if you feel a cold coming on, as you put it, as you define it, remember, you're the one giving the words. You're the one giving the words that said, if you hit your head against a wall, you're going to get a headache. You gave it the words, but if you give it a different word, and there is no suffering from banging your head, and the cold doesn't come on, you have better results. And you need to pay attention to the results to see if you're getting what you want. Now, this isn't some spiritual, highfalutin stuff. This is down to earth, sensible, practical information, isn't it? You are merely asked to evaluate them in terms of their results to you. If you do not want them on the basis of loss of peace, meaning because you recognize that you will lose your peace, they will be removed from your mind for you. Now listen to this. Every response to the ego is a call to war. You might have thought that more appropriately it would have said, every invitation from the ego is a call to war. Now, all the ego does is make suggestions, like a hypnotist. Your responses are a call to war because you're engaging with an illusion as though it's real, thereby giving it energy and seeming to make it real. And because it's a defense mechanism, it responds to you defensively. Every response to the ego is a call to war, and war does deprive you of peace. Yet in this war, there is no opponent. This is the reinterpretation of reality which you must make to secure peace, and the only one you need ever make. Oh, if you hit your head against the wall, you're going to get a headache. That's what the ego suggests. And if you say, well, everybody, we better not hit our head against a wall so we won't have a headache, you've responded to the ego. You've engaged. Instead of stepping away from it like you would a turd on the sidewalk. I feel a cold coming on. Be careful not to engage with it. Be careful not to engage with that suggestion. I know you think you said it. But when you hear those words in your mind, be alert. Challenge it. Correct it. Why, that suggestion is the biggest bunch of bullshit I ever heard, because colds don't have a life of their own. I would have to give it all the life it has, and I'm not going to do that. It's not the Father's will, and therefore it's not my will. And you be quick about it. You be quick about making the correction. You be glad enough to have the language of healing, the language of truth available to you, that you use it to correct these unkind and malicious suggestions that the ego makes solely for the purpose of creating conflict, so that you lose your peace, which is the condition for knowledge, the condition for knowing the truth. You know, you could say that I'm inviting, encouraging you to become active students of the course. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm encouraging you to become conscious, active Christs. I'm encouraging you to actively energize, we might say, what you divinely are. if you were going to become a student of truth, you would have to go to the teacher of truth, wouldn't you? Well, this is not the teacher of truth. This is a record of the teacher of truth, but the teacher of truth is the altar in you, is the Holy Spirit in you, that which is nothing more than your right mind. So that's where you go to be taught. And as I've said before, the wonder of the way it works is that you go to your essential being to be healed of the misperceptions you have developed about yourself and which you believe and trust and reinforce. You go to your very own divine being to be taught the truth so that you might come into the full conscious experience of it once again and lose your insanity. Abandon your insanity and become integrated, single, one, indivisible, undivided, as a conscious experience. I'm being rather pushy today. Like I'm saying, get your ass in gear. But what I'm doing is saying, in so many words, you're missing the joy that's yours by delaying your awakening, by justifying suffering, by justifying the dream, because after all, you're in the human condition, or you're in this lifetime, like some sort of a side trip from your birthright that you've got to live with until you get back on the main road. I'll tell you something. The kingdom of heaven is a wonderful insane asylum. Because everything about it constantly makes the inmates ill at ease with their definitions. It constantly gives you feedback that the way you're looking at things, the way you're thinking about things, the language you're using is falling short of your fulfillment. Why? So that you'll make a different choice. If I've made nothing else clear today, let this be what is clear. You will wake up here. You will make the journey back right where you are. So right where you are is where you will, as they say, come in contact with communicable diseases and not catch them. Right here is where you will slip and bump your head and have no injury. Or, if you don't catch it quickly, then you might find an injury which is almost instantaneously healed. Right here is where you will have the experience of the journey back. Right here is where you will have the experience of the experiential redefinition of matter into spirit. Right here, in the middle of the human condition, is where the kingdom of heaven will emerge in your conscious awareness. So don't delay by saying, well, what can you expect? You can expect miracles. But then you've got to implement your expectation by not lazily and sloppily going along with the old language of suffering. You see? I feel a cold coming on. Better get the echinacea. No? I feel a cold coming on. But my healing can be faster than the amount of time it takes me to get to the echinacea, because I'm stepping back one step from that suggestion and saying, I don't buy it. I object. I correct this suggestion. I will not give it life by energizing it with my faith in what it's saying and the penalties that come along with believing it. I will not do that. Take the step back home immediately. Take the step back in the direction of home immediately. And have fun with it. One last thing. Right in the middle of your ignorance is where your enlightenment will come. So now you can say, well, what can I expect in the middle of my ignorance? Enlightenment. That's what you can expect. A sudden shift of perception. That doesn't leave you where it found you. That doesn't leave you where you thought you were. Okay. Please take what I'm saying to heart. Because there's absolutely nothing going on in the so-called human condition that can actually object to and stand in the way of sudden shifts of perception. If I continue any further, I will belabor the point. It's in your hands. It's in your mind. Which language are you going to use to think with? I love you all. P.S. Those in the insane asylum do not see the characteristic of their insanity. If they did, they could set it aside. And when they do, they will set it aside. I will not always address what you think you need to learn. I will not always address what you think you need to know. But I will always address exactly what needs to be known for your release from the insanity that you know not the characteristics of. The Holy Spirit works this way, and you must trust it. I look forward to being with you next week.